My name is Rebecca Hayes. I'm 39 years old, and I learned the hard way that family devotion has its boundaries when my own mother stood in a crowded family courtroom during my ex-husband's custody hearing and labeled me an unfit mother. Your Honor, her voice rang out, sharp and unwavering. My daughter has always been erratic. She struggles to keep a steady job, has been in and out of counseling, and honestly, I don't believe she's capable of raising my grandson. I sat at the defendant's table, dressed in a modest navy jacket and white shirt, my brown hair tied back in the simple style I'd worn for 15 years. The faint mark where my wedding ring once sat, removed 6 months prior, seemed to shine under the courtroom's stark fluorescent lights. Across the aisle, my ex-husband, Marcus, wore a smug grin, his high-priced attorney nodding in agreement with my mother's damaging words. They had clearly orchestrated this attack, knowing the weight my mother's testimony would carry. She's never been able to offer stability, my mother went on, her tone growing bolder. She vanishes for days, claiming it's work, but I've never seen proof of consistent employment. My grandson deserves a proper home with his father, who has a thriving career and the means to provide for him. 8-year-old Tyler sat in the front row beside my sister Karen, his dark eyes filled with bewilderment as he watched his grandmother speak against his mother. Karen avoided looking at me, her silence as hurtful as our mother's accusations. I thought back to the 2 years since my divorce, the sleepless nights spent juggling custody negotiations while managing some of the state's most intricate legal cases. I'd carefully balanced my professional duties with my role as Tyler's mother. She lives in a cramped downtown apartment, my mother continued, drives an old car, and can barely afford Tyler's school supplies. Marcus, on the other hand, has a spacious suburban home, a reliable income, and the resources to give a child the life he deserves. Judge Patricia Morrison, presiding from the bench, maintained a neutral expression as she listened. A colleague I'd known for over a decade. She understood the demands of our profession, but showed no hint of familiarity, upholding the impartiality her role required. Moreover, my mother declared, her voice peaking, Rebecca has always been cagey about her so-called job. She claims it's important, but she won't say what she does. For all we know, she could be tangled in something unlawful, something that could endanger my grandson. The courtroom hummed with murmurs of agreement. Marcus's family, filling the left side of the gallery, nodded in support of my mother's character attack. My side of the room was nearly empty, occupied only by a few friends who'd taken time off to stand by me, people who actually knew what I did for a living. Marcus's attorney, James Crawford, rose to speak. Your Honor, the testimony clearly demonstrates that the child's best interests lie with my client. The mother's inability to provide basic stability, coupled with her secretive behavior regarding her employment, raises serious doubts about her parental fitness. I stayed silent, my hands clasped calmly before me, observing the calculated assault unfold. 15 years in the judiciary had taught me the value of timing, of letting others expose their intentions before revealing your own. Miss Hayes, Judge Morrison addressed me directly, how do you respond to these claims about your employment and your ability to care for your son? I stood slowly, my movements deliberate. Your Honor, I'd like to call a witness to address these concerns. Marcus's lawyer looked puzzled. Your Honor, we weren't informed of any witnesses. The witness only became available this morning, I replied evenly, but I believe his testimony will clarify any questions about my professional status. Judge Morrison nodded. Proceed, call your witness. I approached the courtroom doors and opened them. A tall man in a pristine dark suit entered, his silver hair impeccably groomed, his presence commanding instant respect. Your Honor, I said, my voice clear and steady, I'd like to call Chief Justice William Barrett to the stand. A collective gasp filled the room. My mother's expression shifted from smug to confused to horrified as the Chief Justice of the state Supreme Court took the witness stand. Chief Justice Barrett, I began, my tone professional yet composed, could you please identify me for the court? The Chief Justice looked at me, his voice formal but kind. You are the Honorable Rebecca Hayes, Associate Justice of the State Supreme Court, where you have served with excellence for the past 8 years. The courtroom fell silent. I heard my mother's sharp gasp. saw Marcus's lawyer frantically flipping through his notes. "And Chief Justice Barrett," I continued, "could you describe the nature of my professional responsibilities?" "Justice Hayes oversees some of our most challenging civil and criminal cases," he replied. "She serves on our appellate panel for capital cases, leads our Judicial Ethics Committee, and has authored several pivotal rulings on family law and child welfare." Tyler's eyes widened with awe as he began to understand why his mother often worked late, why she retreated to her study with dense legal documents, why she spoke with such authority about justice and fairness. "One final question, Chief Justice," I said. "Could you address the claims about my financial stability?" He gave a slight smile. "Justice Hayes earns an annual salary of $195,000 plus benefits. She owns her downtown apartment, a penthouse, in fact, and a vacation home in the mountains. Her financial disclosures are publicly available as required for all judges." I turned to face the courtroom, where my mother sat, stunned, her carefully crafted testimony unraveling. "Your Honor," I addressed Judge Morrison, "I'd like to explain why my family was unaware of my position." Judge Morrison nodded, clearly intrigued. 8 years ago, when I was appointed to the state Supreme Court, I chose to keep my professional life separate from my personal relationships. This wasn't out of shame, far from it. I wanted my son to have an ordinary childhood, free from the scrutiny and pressure that comes with being a judge's child. I looked at Tyler, whose face showed a mix of pride and confusion. I chose to live simply, to drive a practical car, to shop at regular stores instead of luxury boutiques. I wanted Tyler to learn the value of hard work and humility, not to grow up entitled because of my position. Marcus stared at me, as if seeing me for the first time. During our marriage, he'd often mocked my dull courthouse job, never bothering to inquire about the details. "The reason I'm sometimes unavailable for long periods," I continued, "is because I'm handling complex cases that can span weeks or months. The reason I couldn't always attend school events is because I was drafting rulings that impact thousands of families across our state." Chief Justice Barrett spoke again. "If I may, Your Honor, Justice Hayes possesses one of the sharpest legal minds I've encountered in my 30 years on the bench. Her rulings have been upheld by federal courts, and she's been nationally recognized for her contributions to family law." I returned to the defendant's table, no longer a defendant but what I'd always been, a judge with 15 years of legal experience and a reputation for fairness and integrity. "Your Honor," I said to Judge Morrison, "I've devoted my career to protecting children and families. I've authored rulings that have removed children from harmful environments, ensured equitable custody arrangements, and prioritized child welfare above all else." The courtroom was now completely silent. The claim that I'm unfit to raise my own son is not only false, but an affront to every family I've safeguarded and every child whose interests I've protected from this very bench. I looked at my mother, who was pale and unable to meet my gaze. What's especially painful is that these accusations come from people who never bothered to ask about my work, who showed no interest in my career, who assumed the worst without seeking the truth. Marcus's lawyer, clearly thrown, tried to recover. "Your Honor, we were unaware of." "Of what?" I cut in. "That your client was married to a state Supreme Court justice for 6 years and never cared to learn what she did for a living." Judge Morrison leaned forward. "Mr. Crawford, was your client unaware of his wife's profession during their marriage?" Marcus stammered. She said she worked at the courthouse. I assumed she was a clerk or something." The absurdity hung heavily in the air. I'd been married to a man who, for 6 years, thought I was a courthouse clerk, who never questioned my long hours, the legal briefs I brought home, or my trips to judicial conferences. "Your Honor," I said, addressing Judge Morrison, "I'd like to submit my judicial performance reviews, financial disclosure forms, and the custody evaluation report prepared by Dr. Sandra Williams, a court-appointed child psychologist." Judge Morrison reviewed the documents swiftly. "Dr. Williams rated you as an exceptional parent with strong bonds to your child and no concerns about your ability to provide care." I glanced around the courtroom, at my mother, who couldn't look at me, at my sister, who seemed ashamed, at Marcus, staring at the floor, and at Tyler, who gazed at me with newfound pride. "Your Honor," I said, "I've spent my career ensuring children's best interests are prioritized in custody decisions. I've seen what happens when parents weaponize their children, when family members turn against each other for personal gain, when assumptions replace evidence." My voice grew firm. "I'm requesting full physical custody of my son, with supervised visitation for the father pending completion of co-parenting classes. I also request that future custody discussions exclude extended family members who have shown a willingness to provide false testimony." Judge Morrison nodded solemnly. "Given the evidence and the troubling testimony from the defendant's mother, I'm granting full custody to Justice Hayes. Visitation for the father will be supervised for the next 6 months, with potential revision upon successful completion of court-ordered parenting classes." As the courtroom cleared, Tyler ran to me, wrapping his arms around my waist. "Mom, why didn't you tell me you were a judge?" he whispered. I knelt to his level. "Because I wanted you to love me for being your mom, not for my job." "That's so cool," he said, grinning. "Does this mean you can put people in jail?" "Sometimes," I admitted, "but mostly I help families learn how to care for each other." My mother approached cautiously, her earlier confidence gone. "Rebecca, I didn't know. I'm so sorry." I stood, my arm around Tyler's shoulders. "Mom, you testified under oath that I was unfit without knowing anything about my life, my career, or my abilities. You were willing to jeopardize my relationship with my son based on assumptions and bias." Her eyes welled with tears. "I thought I was helping. Marcus told me." "Marcus said what he needed to win custody," I interrupted. "And you believed him over your own daughter." The courtroom was nearly empty now, just family and a few lingering spectators. "For 15 years, you've asked about my work, and I gave vague answers because I wanted privacy. But you never pushed, never showed genuine curiosity. You assumed that because I didn't boast about my accomplishments, I had none." I looked at my sister Karen, who was quietly crying in the front row. "I became a judge at 31, one of the youngest in state history. My rulings are studied in law schools. I've protected thousands of children and families. I've dedicated my life to justice and fairness." Chief Justice Barrett, who had waited respectfully in the gallery, approached. "Rebecca, I hope this doesn't deter you from your outstanding work." "Thank you, Chief Justice," I replied. "If anything, it's reminded me why our work matters." As we left the courthouse, Tyler holding my hand, I realized this painful ordeal had taught me something profound. I'd worked so hard to shield my son from the complexities of my role that I'd concealed my true self from those who should have known me best. More importantly, I learned that respect gained through assumptions is meaningless, while respect earned through integrity is unbreakable. 6 months later, Marcus completed his parenting classes and received unsupervised visitation. He never remarried and never again questioned my ability to care for our son. My mother sent an apology letter, but I didn't reply. Some betrayals reveal too much about a person's character to simply forgive. Tyler now proudly tells his friends his mom is a judge. He's learned about justice, fairness, and standing up for what's right. He's also learned that sometimes those closest to you can cause the deepest pain, but that doesn't lessen your value. As for me, I learned that hiding your light doesn't protect you. It just makes it easier for others to underestimate you. I stopped concealing who I was, embraced my achievements, and taught my son that integrity and hard work are worth celebrating. The woman who entered that courtroom feeling attacked and alone was the same woman who left vindicated and strong. The difference wasn't in what I'd accomplished. It was in my willingness to let others see who I'd always been. Justice, I discovered, isn't just something you uphold. Sometimes it's something you claim for yourself.